Welcome to Minerva Meets. I'm your host, Sonal Chandler, and this is episode 26. Today, we're going to be talking about identity and access management, or INAM, and specifically what it really means inside an organization. Who has access to what and why? So, when you think about identity, it really sits at the center of security, compliance, and that day-to-day operations. But when access isn't clearly defined or maintained, people end up with access to more than they really need to have access to. And that ends up exposing an organization. So today I am joined by Hanno, CEO of Iden House, to talk a little bit about the foundation and the fundamentals about identity and why so many organizations struggle to get it right. Thank you so much, Hanno, for joining. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, and please correct me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly.
No, it's all right. Yeah, it's like a little Berlitz class. I get it. It's some German, some Swedish, it keeps you on your toes right off the bat. So yeah, it's Hanno. I appreciate the warm intro. I'm excited to be here. I think we're going to have a great conversation about identity and why it's so complex and also why it has such a big positive impact on organizations as they're trying to get their arms around security. I've been doing identity and access management now for about 25 years, all the way back in the Novell days is where I got started. And we actually work with really all the major vendors and have a number of projects going on in, medium-sized businesses all the way up through Fortune 50 companies. So we've seen super large-scale identity management with very complex organizations that maybe are not only managing their corporate identities and their customer identities, but then they have subsidiary identities, right? So they might have an organization that either that they partly own or totally own or don't own at all, but they're also kind of inside the organization. And so how do you manage those complex identity barriers where someone needs access to your corporate systems, but they're not really technically an employee, to, medium-sized businesses that are really dipping their toes in for the first time? They have, 500 to 1,000 employees and they realize things aren't scaling anymore and they're drowning under, incidents and help desk requests. And they're just not really at the maturity level that they need to be. And they're not going to be able to keep scaling up without some kind of solution.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's dive in. But before we get into really the nitty gritty here, I always like to level set with our audience to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of, what are we really talking about when we talk about identity? So can you kind of give us a high level of what identity means?
Sure. Identity management. So, the first thing people think about is human identities, right? You have an employee or a contractor or a vendor or a customer, right? And so it's establishing who that person is really the identity piece, right? Who is Hanno Ekdahl, right? You have information typically, especially for employees, and luckily now for contractors too. For the longest time, HR departments didn't want to put contractors in their HR system because they were concerned of them being viewed as, an employee and then, potential legal liabilities. And I think we've gotten past that, which is huge. So the biggest thing is high quality data around your users. So for employees and contractors, that's typically the HR system, right? And so HR has to go through this process of validating who you are. They look at they fill out the I-9, they validate your identity, and they put it into the HR system, and then that feeds into the identity management system. So at that point, we have an identity for you, right? Your name, we know what your unique employee ID number is from the HR system. We know who your manager is, your information about your job, cost center, and we can use all that data then to start managing your access. Right. So that's sort of the downstream piece. The first part is establish the identity, which is good data around you that we can trust. Now I know who you are. And then the access management piece is, the policies that are defined in the identity management system that determine what you have access to.
Yeah. So when it comes to cybersecurity, right, why is identity so foundational to that?
Yeah. Well, so, traditionally they call it the castle model, right? Where you have people are trying to secure everything at the boundary of the organization, right? Your firewall, your LAN, your VPN, whatever. And now we're in a hybrid environment where people have identities in the cloud, and then you're trying to manage it on-prem and off-prem, and people are using software as a service applications, right? So that model broke down.
Yeah.
right? So I can't manage things necessarily at the perimeter anymore because I don't have a perimeter, right? I have the on-prem things that are but then I have plenty of things that are in the cloud too. So
Yeah.
now you need to think of a new organizing principle for your security model, and that really is managing everything at the user level, the identity
Mhm.
level. So, looking at what I'm trying to access and making real-time decisions and reevaluating access on the fly, right? So everything is based on policy and that clean data set that I was talking
Mhm.
about.
Sure,
And you can
sure.
add in things like, what device am I accessing from? What location am I coming from?
Mhm.
Those types of things, and then make some more sophisticated decisions about what I should and should not have access to. So some organizations, for example, if you're accessing via a mobile device, maybe they'll let you see your email and enter your timesheet, and you can't do anything else. They lock it.
Right. Right.
It's
Yeah.
not coming through a trusted device. Uh, but you want to do more than that, you're going to have to log into a machine or a
Yeah.
device that we
Yeah.
trust.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting because there's so many places to manage all of this, right? There's, like you said, the mobile device, what's accessed internally, what's accessed when somebody is, on the road. There's just so much. I feel like the breadth and depth of this, of just security in general, is so wide. And so when these things start breaking down, like when identity isn't managed well, what starts to break? Like how can you tell what's happening there?
I would say, first of all, when identity breaks, the first thing you see is a lot of workarounds, which is people trying to put their fingers in the dikes and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
keep
yeah.
keep the dike from failing, right?
Right. Yeah,
And,
well,
we have these people that were terminated 3 months ago, and they still have accounts on our system, and they were never
yes.
cleaned up, right? The orphan accounts problem, everyone's nightmare.
Right.
Or, Hanno's been in the organization for 25 years and he started off here, and now he's still got access to those applications from 20 years ago and his new applications for his current role that he just got put into, right? So you
Right.
have entitlement creep, right? I keep just
Yes.
doing access. Well, if somebody compromises my account, they get all the access that I have. So the least privileges model is something that organizations want to adhere to, and theoretically, it's great, and in practice, it's fairly hard because you can have someone continually true up access, and that's where something like identity management helps, especially if you have a concept of roles in your organization, right? So I change roles, and then it goes, oh, okay, Hanno's got a new cost center, a new job title, a new department. We're going to reevaluate what he should have access to, and then you can strip away the old access by removing one role and then applying the new role and granting me access to whatever else I need to have.
Yeah. So that role-based access control is it's an interesting implementation because when you sit down with those that are responsible for implementing it and we start going through all the different roles and it starts with even having an organization that has roles identified and then what they can access and that game of who can access what. Well, Billy used to always access this. Well, now Billy shouldn't be accessing. That conversation is probably some of the hardest conversations I've had. I don't know if, I know that at your level, you're probably not having those conversations, but I'm sure you've heard of these conversations that are just so difficult.
They are difficult. No one likes to have things taken away from them, right?
No, right.
Organizations. So I'll give you an example. We had a large global organization, and they had a decentralized model for the longest time, right? So
Mhm.
they had multiple domains serving different regions, and they had local administrators going in and managing users directly, right? And the problem with identity management is if I'm managing something locally, those changes don't necessarily propagate up, right? The idea is you manage it in the center and you push it out to the places that need it. So removing admin access from hundreds of AD administrators so they could not make changes was a change management nightmare because
Oh, I can
people feel they're
imagine.
not being trusted,
Yeah.
taking something away from them. I can't help my users. So yes, a lot of that comes with communication, helping people understand the security model, These people still had things to do, right? The bulk of their job was not administering individual users, right? The bulk of the job was maintaining the health of the environment and, updating things and restructuring things, et cetera. So yes, that change management dimension is hard. I think the key there is good communications, creating, we have videos, town halls, all sorts of things we do to engage the population. We record them so they're available later. Try to answer questions, and then, giving people a place to go. If you have questions, reach out to, this email distribution list or this chat. They can reach out and they get a response pretty quickly. It goes a long way to smoothing that over, but it is always challenging when people feel you're taking something away.
Yeah. And, especially nowadays I just feel like the cyber crime world has just increased exponentially. Like, trust me, you don't want access to everything. You're lucky if you don't. So, but speaking of initiatives and things like that, where do you see some of these INAM initiatives kind of get stuck? Where do they stall?
It was so funny. We were just talking about roles, right? And so role-based access control, there's been a lot of criticisms about it. Like, oh, it's never been successful. No, it's successfully. Yeah. We have. And a number of customers. And in order to do it successfully, you have to really use the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule. You can't automate everything. Everything doesn't fit into a role. Otherwise, you're going to have more roles than people because there's always exceptions. Always, right? I need to access these 5 apps, but I'm also doing this one other job, so I need access to one of them. Great. You manage it through a workflow. I submit a request. It gets approved. It's all logged. It's all auditable, but it's not a separate role just for me. So that discipline, I think, is the hardest thing for businesses to understand. They want to automate everything, right? Let's be 100% maximally efficient and automate everything. Unfortunately, there's so much complexity and access and systems. I mean, we've already talked about it. You got cloud systems, SaaS, and this, and that, different types of users and players. You can't manage everything. You can't automate everything. Automate the majority of it, right? Take most of that admin work away. Tighten up your security where it needs to be tight, and then manage the exceptions through workflows and other tools, which are absolutely acceptable ways to manage that risk. They're auditable. You have approvals. You have a disciplined process. It's providing the structure around it in order to manage it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So go ahead.
So where I see a lot of these things going wrong is, it's kind of the Rube Goldberg thing, right? They're trying to do everything with the solution instead of making some of the hard decisions, or they get lazy and it's like, well, just give everyone the same access in this role. It's like, no, that's not appropriate. Like it's easy, but it's wrong. It's wrong-headed. So a lot of organizations aren't willing to stay in the conversation and come up with a design that makes sense. And they're under a lot of pressure. IT is under a lot of pressure to automate everything from the business, and the business doesn't understand the trade-offs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. In fact, I focus a lot with smaller organizations, and they have the same issues because they now have this maybe a 20 to 30 person firm, and they've always operated in a way where everybody has access to everything. And then as you start taking things away or trying to even open the conversation that maybe that's what we need to start doing, that's when all of a sudden the phone calls stop coming because they've gone dark trying to figure this out, and this analysis paralysis and this fear of taking access away from people because they don't want them to feel bad. And that's the least of your worries here.
It's interesting you say that because, I was at a conference on identity management, and there was this whole conversation about people getting offended by the term zero trust. We don't trust you. And oh, you don't trust me? This is a personal thing? I'm serious. I know it sounds silly, but it's totally true. So, please, why wouldn't you trust me? I don't trust you either. You're right. It becomes this ego thing. And so people have been actually people have been trying to reword it. They've been like, okay, well, we're going to call it a, continuous session validation strategy or something like that. So people are sensitive, and sometimes things that you wouldn't think of can land on them the wrong way, and they get, all upset about something that really is just a framework and a concept and isn't anything personal to them.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, as these organizations start these initiatives and they're going down this process. They might get stalled in areas like identifying role. But do you think that some of this work, this is almost a loaded question, is underestimated? Like, do organizations think they can just get this done like that, but then they start, looking at their organization and they're like, wait a minute, this is a lot more than what we thought.
The thing I would say there is that, and I've seen this a good bit from vendors as well as from customers, is they look at it as just a technology install.
Yes. Yeah.
We've written a number of blogs on systems thinking and designing your system with outcomes in mind. So anything that's locally optimized is probably not optimized for outcomes, right? On the HR side, I'm optimizing for the HR requirements that I have, my EEOC reporting requirements, my payroll requirements, right? I'm not necessarily thinking about the access requirements downstream and how certain data might be really important for granting access to different systems, right? And so there's that alignment between the processes and the data coming out of HR with the downstream impacts and identity management, and then how that also translates into access, right? And so that systems thinking, where you have to think about how do we optimize the whole, not just the individual pieces, is the conversation that's not happening typically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And my experience with HR has actually been really positive. The reason I think that organizations get into trouble is they don't want to talk to HR. They don't build that bridge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wins for HR in an identity management solution. Number one, employees have a much better onboarding experience. I showed up my network access. My computer was configured and ready for me. That's a wonderful onboarding experience.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
To provide that. So there's a win in it for them, but they have to understand that and you have to communicate it. And then also, once they're aware, they typically want to work with you. Might not be their number one priority, but they're not necessarily saying, no, we absolutely won't do that. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Build the bridge, have communications, and think about how the whole system works together.
Yeah. Well, speaking of sort of the win for HR, that's, the ROI, right? And oftentimes a lot of organizations are running after this compliance thing that they have to meet. And that's why I need these projects done, right? But, what real business value does identity and access management create for an organization? Like, do you ever have to have those conversations?
Oh, yeah. It's funny, back when I started doing identity and access management, we used to do business cases all the time. The last one I did was like 2 years ago. So it's actually kind of fallen to the wayside where organizations really are not asking for business cases anymore. I think they recognize it as table stakes to have an effective security program, which in a way is nice. But getting back to your question, there's qualitative and then there's quantitative benefits, right? So quantitative is things we can save, right? So reduction of headcount is one. It's not very popular. A lot of organizations don't like to say that. But that goes right to the bottom line, right? If I have fewer FTEs or fewer contractors supporting my environment, there's less cost, right? So those are the hard cost savings, right? Yeah. I don't need as many administrators to manage endpoint accounts, et cetera. Now, there's also qualitative or soft benefits, right? People can reset their passwords and not stuck waiting on the help desk. The volume of help desk calls has gone down. The time to get someone set up is much faster. So now we're all basically people can be more productive. Now, some organizations say, well, I don't care about that. I'm like, well, the time accrues, right? Right. Give me an extra 10 hours a week where I didn't have to do X, fight with password resets or request access and wait for it to get approved. And I couldn't do my job. That time accrues, right? So if I can automate those things and make them seamless and smooth, then I can be more productive. I can get more work done. And I do believe there's a benefit there. Some organizations are a bit skeptical of that. The way we like to position it, and I think most organizations look at it this way, is, the organization is looking to build a foundation to continue to scale and grow. So if I can scale and grow with the same staff I have today, they're knowledgeable, they're able to solve problems. No system's perfect. Sometimes a transaction doesn't process. Someone's still going to have to go in and manually maybe fix something or resend a transaction. Those people stick around, but, now maybe we're managing twice the number of users 5 years from now with the same staff that we have today. And so that knowledge of the system and processes combined with identity management allows us to scale up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. Well, let's sort of take a turn here and talk a little bit about the big word AI, right? And just how things are changing, right? Everything's changing. What's changing in the world of identity and access management and just security right now that you're seeing, from with AI being so popular?
Well, I think that businesses are hopeful that they can automate everything. It has to be a theme here, right? Let's automate everything. Solve all the problems. It's going to figure it all out. The problem is that AI is not sophisticated enough. It doesn't understand the rules. It will not enforce policies consistently because it doesn't really, it's not mature enough yet to understand all the rule sets and the policies and the procedures and what it's actually trying to accomplish, right? At automating routine tasks. So, if we're looking at compliance things, aggregating logs, looking for patterns, it's pretty good at that. So we really see that as the current frontier of how AI can help in identity management.
Right. Yeah.
Helping with things like role mining, helping with things like looking at, permissions and what's out of round and what needs to be trued up, automating some report generation, those types of things.
Sure. Yeah.
Looking at AI to run your entire identity management solution and not have a staff. I understand why you want that, but it's not happening anytime soon.
No, you still need that human there in the loop that's just watching over it too. Yeah. Well, are you getting these types of requests that come in from your clients that are saying, "Hey, we want to embrace AI and AI everything." Like, how's that going?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the thing is it's the new buzzword, right?
Yeah.
It's exciting. It has all kinds of promise, and I agree it does, right? But it's still several years away. It's going to take some time to mature the capabilities and have it actually perform successfully and consistently in the environment.
Sure. Yeah.
So I understand the excitement,
Right.
but then there's the reality, right? Which is it's just not mature enough yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also think that what I'm seeing is a lot of organizations want to embrace it, but those that might have some legacy systems in place or legacy processes, bad data, all that stuff needs to be revamped, if you will. And that's probably not the right word to use, but it just needs to be looked at. And I think people often forget the upstream work that has to happen before you can even start looking at AI and start putting it into an organization. Now, I'm not saying you can't use it, just more about the cleanup work required around your organization before you can truly take advantage of some of the great capabilities of it. So it's almost sort of like take a lens and look into your organization and try to fix some places before you start, really going all gung-ho with AI is my 2 cents on that.
I think getting your house in order is part of that.
Yes, thank you.
Like any, identity management is a rule-based system. So if you have bad data, you're going to get bad results. You're just going to get them faster. Same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so we all know about AI hallucinations and the fact that AI can make things up. There was just an article I read about this company that had used AI for their KPIs and embedded it in their systems, and it actually had been hallucinating numbers. So the KPIs looked great and all the reports looked awesome, and then they kind of did a validation of it and we're like, oh my gosh, these numbers are not correct. We're mismanaging our business because answers. So there have to be some guardrails in place around AI so that it actually gives you the right answer. I think that's possible, but I don't think the models are there yet.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Well, let's talk about the little guys, the small businesses, right? And for a small to mid-sized organization that doesn't necessarily have this large identity team in place or even a large IT team, where do they start?
I think, the small, medium-sized business, the economics of it don't necessarily make sense unless you're using sort of a smaller tool, right? So there's actually tons of identity management startups out there that offer products at a fairly reasonable price, right? So that's what I would encourage them to do if they're looking for some sort of software solution. Is you're probably not going to be able to afford one of the big players because their
Yeah.
pricing model, quite honestly, is just out of reach for a small
Right.
business, right? The economics
Right.
just don't make sense. That said, I think starting with an identity management tool from one of these niche vendors is a great way to start getting your house in order and to start automating things. And when you automate things, you learn very quickly if you have data quality problems. Now, I will say that data quality problems were the number one challenge when I got started in this business. And quite honestly, they've gotten much, much better. Much
Sure.
better. We still bump into them, and they're not perfect, but it's much better. So
Yeah.
thinking about your data models, thinking about being buttoned up, paying attention to the hygiene around identities or paying attention to identity hygiene,
Yeah.
right? How do we get users into our systems? How do we get them out? Start documenting things. Take a look at your processes, understand them end to end, and then look for opportunities to optimize them.
Yeah.
Think about the outcomes, right? If we're going to automate this, when does the person have to be in our HR system? We have one customer, it's actually a fairly large organization, and their HR organization was validating your employment or completing your employment record in the first 3 days when you were on site, when they did your I-9 and they verified that everything was, correct and you were a citizen and you could work. From an HR process standpoint, there's nothing wrong with that. But from an identity automation standpoint, I'm not kicking off any of my provisioning time until I've already arrived. Well, there's no opportunity to improve the onboarding experience, to automate access, to automate workstation provisioning, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to either change the HR process or grab the data earlier on in the process so that you can create a functioning baseline identity and kick off those things. So some hard conversations to have.
Absolutely. And I do think that even just simple beginning to educate yourself about it, right? Understand what it is, and then taking some of those big concepts and figuring out, how do you take that and apply it to my organization? And it may not be exactly like a larger corporation would do it, but trying to sort of figure out, peeling back that onion and understanding what of this can apply to my organization. Even if it's not a large system or one of those large players, at least it's learning about who the players are and how it fits into your organization, and even starting to educate your staff about it, right? Like getting some of those buzzwords in the organization around security and identity will really help when and if you engage with a consultant or somebody to come in to help you do it. It's not like everyone's just speaking a different language. People are familiar with the terms.
Well, that's one of the challenges we've seen too, is organizations, there's, smart IT people, but if you haven't done identity management before, you can't an issue. So we've come in and done a number of remediations where an internal team implemented an IDM solution and basically made every rookie mistake in the book, right? And so the thing was held together with baling wire, and you had competing code that was doing different things and stepping on each other, using local variables instead of global variables, and things that may sound a little esoteric, but actually make a huge difference in your ability to have consistent outcomes from the solution, also to maintain it.
Right. Yeah. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, but we are at the end, and I would love for you to, one last question. So if you could leave our listeners with one thing about, shifting their thinking about identity and access management and security in general, what would that one thing be?
I'll be honest with you, I'm going to go back to systems thinking. I think favorite things to talk about because, again, it's process, policy, technology, and they all have to work together in a cohesive whole. Everyone focuses on the technology piece. No one's thinking about the upfront data process piece. The data process piece is the head of your system. The technology is the heart. And if the head and the heart aren't aligned, you're going to get bad results. So take a moment, take a step back, take a look at the processes, take a look at the solution from end to end. What is the identity lifecycle from HR to the endpoints? And you're going to come up with the best answer.
That is amazing advice. And I can't agree more, because I can't tell you how many times I've walked into organizations and they're just at the solution. They haven't necessarily thought about all the upfront work that has had to happen. And we have to sort of say, pause, time out. Let's look at this a minute. So thank you so much. Completely agree with that. This has been a wonderful conversation. Let our audience know how they can get in touch with you, how they can get in touch with Eidenhouse, and where can they find you?
Yeah. So we have our website, www.idenhouse.com, and that's IDENHAUS. And you can send an email to info@idenhouse.com, and you will get a response. We also have a contact us form on our website. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, we are big fans of publishing our point of view. We have several hundred blog posts on everything from stakeholder alignment to HR processes, role-based access control, governance, everything in between. So there's a wealth of information out there, a great way for you to get started.
And a little secret, I will tell you that when I met Hanno, I actually investigated his site a little bit, and I have used a lot of those blogs for some things for my own work. So thank you for bringing that up. So go visit that. It's amazing work out there. And if you want to get in touch with Minerva Consulting, you can reach us at letstalk@minervaconsultinginc.com. You can also go to our online home at minervaconsultinginc.com. And last 3 steps that I'd like our listeners to take is, number 1, subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating, and add a comment. I'll read all of them. Thank you so much, Hanno. We'll need to have you back, and we can have a session about systems thinking, and we'll focus just on that.
That sounds great. I'm already excited.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks.